You'll just have to drown and then I'll resuscitate you. It'll probably work.
Or is that the sound of popcorn? Sound of drowning and popcorn is very similar. I've just noticed that.
I wouldn't mind drowning in popcorn.
Oh, that sounds good. To drown in butter? That's a pretty good way to go.
That must have happened in The Simpsons at some point.
Yeah. Would my rosuvastatin, I'm on a statin for the cholesterol, would that keep me alive a little bit longer, or would the salt and the butter just take me over ultimately?
It may keep you alive for another 5 or 6 seconds, I reckon.
So we've been talking about all these films in water recently. Even Wakanda Forever. There was a lot of water there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
There's something going on with water and films. What's your take, and what films do you remember in water that you've loved over the years?
I tell you, I tell you what I do think about water. So I'm an anaesthetist. I've been an anaesthetist for it's going to be 26 years next month. And when you're putting somebody off to sleep for an operation, you always have a little bit of a spiel. And so I, ask people, it's really common. I can say, what would you like to dream about? What would you like to be doing if you weren't here having an operation? And I reckon 75 or 80% of my patients all say the same thing. They all say, I'd love to be by the sea on the beach. Oh. There is something so fundamental about being near the water. Yeah. It's kind of just something at the core of humanity. Everybody dreams of the same thing. So I'm not surprised it's reflected in cinema as well. So there's, I have a bunch of favourite seaside movies. I have kind of come up with a bit of a list because there's enough here that I think I could spot a bit of a pattern.
Okay.
One thing we touched on last week, I think we mentioned this, was Moana, which is the 2016 Disney film, and I don't know whether you've seen that. You're kind of your family kind of a little bit too old probably for you to have been seeing Disney films 6 years ago.
No, because the kids were like 13, 14, around that when that came out. So I have seen Moana,
which I think is absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, it's delightful.
Yeah. It's been it's such a renaissance in Disney animation. So like the kind of run of quality from the Frozen, Big Hero 6, Zootopia, Moana, just an outstanding run of movies. Written by Jared Bush, who also co-wrote Zootopia. So I'm not surprised with a pedigree like that. It's an outstanding film. But in the same way that The Way of Water last week left me kind of a bit dazed because there was so much on screen and it was so brightly lit. Mm-hmm. The kind of the warm sea in Moana leaves me feeling very mellow somehow. It's very seductive. Yeah. It feels like a week at the seaside going to see Moana. I love that movie. Really, really great.
So it's like a vacation within the theater.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why we go to the theater altogether, isn't it?
That's what you taught me at the Christmas time. We Marxists, we want more of that, as it is right now under capitalist rule. We don't get that time very often. We don't get the vacation.
We need to reclaim our time. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, nice. All right. Should I talk about some of my films or one of my films? Or
yeah, go on. Yeah, absolutely. So if we're going to have a seaside holiday,
yeah. So I grew up on the coast of Maine, in between the Atlantic Ocean and the Androscoggin River. So I was sort of surrounded by water. Our house wasn't right on the water or anything like that, but there was always water around, and Maine is just full of lakes and water. I did live in the West for a while, on the desert, right? The desert, where the desert meets the Rocky Mountains, and it was so dry, and the summers were so hot, and I just felt like I was evaporating. So I know what you mean about this appeal of water, and most people live pretty close to a river or some source of water. But it's also overwhelming. I'm a terrible swimmer. I love to be in the water, but I am scared to death of all water and all those scary scenes in submarines and things filling up with water and you're just struggling for your last breath. Scares the hell out of me again and again. But on my list, I put a number of films, and I'm going to say I'll start with like my biggest fears, and those come from Roots, which was an American TV series, probably the late 70s or early 80s, and Amistad, because both of those films have these scenes where slaves are just dragged, they're just released into the ocean on chains, and that just seems so cruel and so awful. and those two films scared the hell out of me for that reason. But they're very poignant scenes in the sense that they weren't afraid of telling the truth and showing it. And yeah, I'd never seen that before. I'd never even thought about that. Also scaring the hell out of me was Jaws. The first Jaws, I think, is just a great film. I'm not a big Spielberg fan. It's a kind of blockbuster film. I saw it at the right age to see a blockbuster because I saw it in the theater. But there are just some great scenes in there, and that's just a water film that's just etched into my brain forever.
If you want to be scared of the water, then have you seen All Is Lost?
I have not.
It's a 2013 film with Robert Redford.
Oh, that's the Robert Redford thing. Yeah.
Which is, and this should be mandatory watching for all would-be screenwriters. All Is Lost, because I think there's like one or two lines of dialogue in the whole movie.
Wow.
It's just Robert Redford on his own.
Yeah.
He's like a lone sailor.
Yeah.
And his boat, it's a packing, like a...
cargo
like
ship or something.
Not a packing crate, like a shipping container.
Yeah.
So it hits a shipping container like way out at sea and develops this small hole, but the hole gets bigger and bigger.
Oh, God.
And, he's in real trouble.
Yeah.
And this whole 2-hour movie is Robert Redford just gradually sinking.
Yeah.
It's considerably more exciting than that, but it's pretty terrifying, actually, and reminds you of just how vulnerable you are in that situation. It's pretty bleak. Spoilers, it does all just about come right in the end, but really only in the very last shot, pretty much. So this notion that the film being called All Is Lost stays with you all the way through the film. You convince yourself until the very last moment that all really is lost. It's a great bit of visual storytelling.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased that they didn't resort to having Robert Redford talk to himself or chat to a beach ball or speak to himself in a mirror or anything like that. They're quite capable of telling the story without using words.
Yeah. Well, it's also just it underscores the power of water. I mean, both as a danger as well as a life-giving force. It's just so compelling.
We do not have gills for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like
we're not really meant to be there. Yeah, not just anywhere on the water. You're supposed to be in a safe place on the water. I want to say Swept Away, and I'm not talking about the Guy Ritchie and Madonna remake, but there's this Italian film from probably again in the late 70s by Lina Wertmuller called Swept Away, which I think if you haven't seen, you must. Have you seen it?
No. When you said Swept Away, I thought you meant Flushed Away, which is a British animated film for children about two characters who get flushed down a toilet. So it's not that, I take it.
No, it's called Swept Away, and you must see it because it's very political, really addresses class, and it's about a very unlikely couple being stranded on an island. So it does happen on the water quite a bit, but it's good. See it. There's some things that are a little dated. It seems a little misogynistic in places, but I think it's worth the while. And
wasn't there a Harrison Ford movie with the same plot about 20 years ago?
Yeah, with Anne Hesh, who I think just died, right? Yeah, I think that's called 8 days or 7 days or a certain number of days and maybe some hours and minutes too. But I did see that one.
That's a giveaway, isn't it? That's really not what you should call your movie if you want any suspense for the audience.
True. You're giving it away. How about yourself? Anything else?
There is a kind of a tradition of the sea being a stand-in for space.
Yeah.
I think that's how, like last week's film, The Abyss, works.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I think Cameron kind of wanted to make 2001: A Space Odyssey, but wanted to do it a bit differently, so it becomes 2001: a sea odyssey.
Yeah.
The movie that makes me think of is Sphere, which is a Barry Levinson film. Kind of great pedigree on this movie. So 1998, directed by Barry Levinson, written by Paul Atanasio, and Antanasio. Paul Antanasio.
Yeah.
For a quiz show, have you seen that?
Yep.
Donnie Brasco, some great pictures. It has Sharon Stone and Dustin Hoffman and Samuel L. Jackson in it, based on a Michael Crichton book, which is good in some people's eyes and not in others, but should be set up to be an outstandingly good quality film. And it's a kind of underwater version of Event Horizon. Some scientists find this device under the ocean, which kind of makes your wishes come true. It's a little bit like Stalker as well. And I remember being quite excited to go and see this film. Great cast, great director, great writer. Terrible film though. Kind of died a death and didn't really fulfill its promise.
Right.
Event Horizon, a vastly better version of the same story, but Sphere is a film set at the bottom of the ocean where the ocean is standing in for space.
That does happen very often. I agree with you there, and they're kind of similar realms, I guess. It makes sense.
But one of them much cheaper to get to than the other, though.
Yeah. I was going to say Yellow Submarine because it works kind of the same way. Like you're on this journey, maybe it's in water, but it's through space or through the mind. It's kind of an interesting journey that I like a lot.
I have never seen Yellow Submarine. Is it something that I would enjoy now, or something I only would have enjoyed in 1971 or whenever it was made?
I think I've seen it as a kid all the way through, adulthood, even into middle age now. So I'm going to say yes. I think it's worth it.
Okay.
The extent to which the Beatles were participants is a little debatable, but it is. Yeah, it's good. I think it's good. I think it holds up. I think it's going to be. Obviously, it's like one of these things. The animation's not going to hold up terribly well, but I think some of the jokes are going to hold up, and it's just a wonderful way to get some Beatles songs into an animated film. So I would recommend that. I think it works on that space/ocean realm pretty well.
As you know, we are contractually obliged to mention Tom Cruise in every podcast, so I am going to give Tom a little a nod.
And the Scientologists too. We want to make the Scientologists happy because we've said some disparaging things about you in the past.
We have to keep them on side. Have you seen or do you remember Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation? Which I think it's Mission Impossible 5.
Oh,
I think it is.
I haven't seen it. No.
But famously, Tom holds his breath for 6 minutes in that film.
Oh.
Not only is he determined to sprint 200 meters in every film. I think he's contractually obliged to sprint 200 meters in every film. But now I think he wants to prove that he's got other physical prowesses that he can show off as well. So apparently he held his breath for 6 minutes filming this underwater segment in Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. I feel like this is a constantly moving record, isn't it? I think Ed Harris held the record for longest breath hold by an actor when they filmed The Abyss,
Really?
but that was like 3 minutes. Tom did it for 6 minutes for Mission Impossible. Kate Winslet has just done it for 7 minutes 14 seconds, something like that.
I'm sorry.
For Avatar: Way of Water.
I can't believe
So
any
are
of
these
that.
people actors or athletes? Make up your minds.
No, it's not possible. I don't think any of those happened. I think they've got something going on. Maybe that fluid that the rat drank in the abyss. Something's happening because there's no way I can go about 6 seconds. So 6, 7 minutes. I can't believe it. I'm sorry.
But with Tom, anything is possible.
Yeah. All right. No, I haven't seen that. And I never look at that. I always imagine that the films are cut in such a way where their actors are getting a breath here and there. I mean, there's this one in Ed Harris's work on The Abyss. There's when they're putting the water right into his tank, into his his headgear, his suit. I'm amazed at that. But I also am looking for the cuts in the film because he must be getting a breath here every 10, 12 seconds, because he's got the water right in his face and it just doesn't make sense to me. But
does look terrifying that he filmed so many scenes with his face in a bowl of water. I mean, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. When I was a kid, there was a film called The Deep. Do you remember The Deep? Jaqueline Bisset.
I seem to remember getting it confused with Jaws.
Yeah, I think it's the same writer. I think Peter Benchley wrote both, maybe the books. I'm not sure about that, so don't hold me to it. But I think that's they came out more or less the same time, within probably 2 or 3 years at most. There's sort of this underwater treasure that these sort of casual divers come upon, and then, of course, the real treasure hunters come after them, and that left quite an impression on me. And it was, honestly, I knew that we were going to see Jaqueline Bisset's breasts as we went into the theater. I mean, and as an 8-year-old or whatever, that was all the excitement I needed. That was all I needed to buy the ticket. Like the first time I saw breasts on screen. But it's captivating in other ways. There's this moray or this electric eel that scared the hell out of me in that film. And then again, more of this holding breath underwater and these conversations in these impossible air pockets deep at sea. And just left an amazing impression on me. So I don't know that film would hold up, but in my mind, that's like one of the classic water films, as is Das Boot. That's the other one I was going to mention, is the German thing, Das Boot, which is really good. Yeah.
Well, if you want to talk about breath-holding films...
Breath.
Surely the
breath.
breath.
The
breath. I'm going to say that slowly and carefully. Breath-holding films. The king of breath-holding films is The Big Blue, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The Besson film. Have you seen that? It's like the first time I saw it after seeing Leon the Killer.
Okay.
But I think it's Jean Reno's kind of, the first film that really brought him to international prominence.
Yeah.
And that film is all about free diving, isn't it?
It's awesome. I love that film. Roseanne Arquette is in that film, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
I loved that film, yeah. That left a big impression on me as well, yeah.
I remember very little about it apart from sitting in the screening, actively holding my breath at the same time as the actors.
Yeah. Oh.
Just really empathizing with that need to hold your breath, don't breathe, don't breathe, don't breathe. And I suspect everybody else in the screening was doing the same. I think that's how the magic of the film works. If you had to ask me what the story was, I really couldn't tell you. Isn't it? Is it a free diving competition? Is there some kind of crime involved or something? I can't remember the details.
It's the two best free divers are just trying to go deeper and deeper and hold their breath longer and longer, and they've got no gear whatsoever. That's about it. But it's incredible. A lot of it takes place, I think, in Bolivia, and you're thinking, why the hell are they in Bolivia? But they're diving in the lake in Bolivia as part of the training, and then they're in swimming pools sometimes. They're the two main characters, I think, drunk at a party, and they're trying to hold their breath longer than the other one, and I think shenanigans ensue in the hospital. Get some visits from the characters, but I think it's just about this competition between people doing something very, very risky and very, very deadly just to be the best at what they do. But that's probably 35 years old too. I mean, that's probably late 80s.
Yeah, 1988.
88, yeah. So
Big Blue, yeah, absolutely.
But well filmed and terrifying in some ways. And I think they explore they're in Greece too. I think they cover a lot of the territory. I think they cover a lot of the world. And isn't there some scene where there's, I think maybe it's a flashback with the old crazy diving suits, with the big metal headgear, and then the big fluffy suits that they went down in, and the weights and all of that. I mean, it was a film that covered a lot of territory, a lot of Earth anyway. I don't know if it really covered a lot of like the mental terrain of the characters or whatnot, but good geography film, good travel film.
It reminds me a bit of Lady of Shanghai, the Orson Welles film.
Yeah.
Only because I remember reading in Wells's biography, it always comes back to the books, doesn't it? Always got to come back to a book somehow. I read Orson Welles' biography a few years ago, and one of the things it talks about the Lady of Shanghai is that I think basically Orson Welles had a great few weeks hanging out on Errol Flynn's yacht, and they did film a few scenes, but largely I think Welles just kind of ate and drank the budget of the movie. It does remind me. There was a few years ago, I pitched a script about like a holiday on a yacht, and it was like this couple who's kind of married, a little bit rocky, and they don't have any children, and life is a little bit sort of kind of aimless for them, and they go away on this kind of luxury holiday with this kind of crude yacht, and there's this kind of teenager who's one of the crew on the yacht that kind of captivates them both, and he kind of talks them into sneaking onto somebody else's boat, and then there's a crime and somebody gets killed and they're kind of implicated, and it kind of just spirals down from there. But the main reason that people listened when I pitched it was because I was effectively telling them, well, here's an idea how you can spend 8 weeks in the Caribbean pretending to make a film. People do respond to that sort of thing. Whereas if you tell people, I've got like another script I've got which is all set in the South Pole, and you tell people, you'll have to spend 4 weeks in icy Canada filming outdoors.
Ooh, yeah.
And people don't want to do that. Strangely,
is that Skeleton Crew? Is this taking us towards Skeleton Crew?
Oh no, Skeleton Crew. That was zombies on a prison ship.
Oh, God, that was.
Oh yeah, that was. I was so pleased with the pitch for that because it takes literally 8 words to explain what it is. No, Ice Fields. That was it. Was the South Pole movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of people were interested in that, but no one ever really paid any serious money, and nobody made it because nobody wants to freeze their butt off in Canada for 4 weeks shooting outdoors and then freeze a soundstage and film all the indoor bits in freezing cold as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my advice. Write something warm. That's what I would do.
That's because we like to be on the beach.
Learn from my mistakes.
Yeah, people want to be on the beach, on holiday, watching movies.
Well, I think the popcorn's here.
Oh, it should be. It's all over me. I mean, I'm drowning in it.
No, I hope you're not going to ask me to lick that off you now. You know what happened last time.
What was the sound again? Struggling for air here at the popcorn counter.